Hello students, myself Rajeshri Patil, Assistant Professor, Department of Computer Science. Today I am going to explain static and dynamic binding in C++. So in this topic, today I am going to cover what is this binding means what, types of bindings and difference between static binding and dynamic binding, and certain programs on this static and dynamic binding. So let us study what this binding means what. Binding generally refers to the linking of procedure call to the code to be executed in response to the call. Means whenever the processor call to the code to be executed in response to the call, means there is a linking will be taken place to the procedure and procedure call. This linking phenomena is called as a binding. So this binding can be further bifurcated into static binding and dynamic binding. Now study what this static binding means what. Choosing function in a normal way during its compilation time is called as static binding. It means that the whenever we are calling the function, that calling function will be links to the called function during the compilation time. Usually this will be happens, no? This phenomena will be during compilation time it will takes place, and this phenomena is called as static binding. And dynamic binding means that the code associated with the given procedure call is not known until the time of the call at runtime. It means that the linking of procedure call to the called function or calling function to the called function may not going to be known before the runtime or takes place during the runtime. This phenomena is called as dynamic binding. Example on this static binding. So here there is this static binding also we can say as early binding, because before running of a program the linking will be taken place during the compile time, no? So early the binding will be going on, so that's why this phenomena is also called as early binding. So here there is a class base is there. In this one we have a method called display, and in this one just we have an output statement in base class, and there is a derived class is there. In this also we have a display method will be there, and in this one we are providing the output statement as in derived class. So there are one is base class and the one is the derived class. And for this, already we have studied already in the overriding function we have studied. So here we are creating an object to the base class. Object we are creating to the base class, and here we are passing, we are pointer we are creating, sorry, we are creating pointer to the base class, and here we are creating we are passing an object of a derived class. Using this pointer we are calling the method, we are calling the method of a base class, we are calling the method of the base class. This display, whenever we are using the pointer of a base class, we pointer of the base class, and we are calling the display method with the member access operator. At that time it going to call the method of a base class, not the method of the derived class. Is it clear? So because we are using the pointer of the base class, with the help of that we are accessing the display method of a base class, not the method of a derived class. Okay, so at that time it will print the output as in base class, not in derived class. Okay, I think now it is clear. The linking will be taken place, the calling function to the called function during the compile time, and this type of binding is called as static binding. So now example on this dynamic binding we can see here. Same thing, there also we are defining the base class, and here also we are defining the derived class. In static binding how you are defining, difference only is that the base class method will be prefixed with the keyword virtual. Only the difference between the static binding and a dynamic binding, everything should be same. There also base class, and here also base class, derived class and derived class. There also we have a display method, and here also we have a derived class, also we have a display method. But base class method have a keyword virtual. Whenever we are creating a pointer to the base class, at that time via this pointer we are accessing the method of a base class. At that time it may not going to call the method of a base class. Instead of that it will call the method of a subclass or a derived class. Because of that virtual keyword, it may not going to call the method of a base class, it going to call the method of a derived class. These are the certain differences of static binding and dynamic binding. Static binding happens at compile time. Dynamic binding happens at runtime. Already you know in the definition. Hence they are called early binding, and this is called late binding because after the compilation the linking will be taken place. No, that's why this is called as late binding. In static binding, function definition and the function call are linked at the compile time. So whatever the function definition and the function call, means called function and calling function, both linking will be taken place at the compile time. Whereas in the dynamic binding, the linking function call to the called function, calling function and called function will be taken place during the runtime. Static binding can be achieved using the normal functions such as function overloading or operator overloading. Here, in a dynamic binding, this can be achieved with the help of virtual function. The information needed to call function is available before the runtime. In static binding, that's why the static binding result is faster execution of the program. So whatever the informations we required in calling function to the called function, that linking, everything will be taken place during the compile time. No, so that execution becomes somewhat faster. The function call is not at all resolved until for binding runtime, until runtime. No, so the result is somewhat slower, means execution of a program becomes somewhat slower compared to the static binding, because the linking phenomena will going to be takes place during the runtime, whereas in static binding it will takes place during the compile time. So that's why the execution of a program takes place somewhat slower. So these are the certain references books I have referred. Thank you.